The 5 dating disasters that changed my life. Prologue, the bet. You're pathetic, Jake. When was the last time you even went on a date? My best friend Dominic's question hung in the air of our favorite sports bar like a bad smell. Around us, the Sunday football crowd roared as someone scored a touchdown. I didn't even look up to see which team it was. I mumbled, taking another swig of my beer. Swiping right while sitting on your toilet doesn't count as dating, Dom said, grabbing a handful of nachos. Going on actual dates counts as dating. You know, where you meet a person face to face and attempt human connection? I'm focusing on my career right now, I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. My software development startup was finally gaining traction after 3 years of ramen noodles and sleepless nights. Dating is a waste of time and money. Bullshit, Dom replied cheerfully. You're scared. I glared at him. I am not scared. Then prove it. 5 dates in 5 weeks. I laughed. No way. What's the matter? Scared? Dom grinned, knowing exactly how to push my buttons. We'd been friends since freshman year of college, which meant he had 8 years of experience in the fine art of Jake manipulation. I'm not scared. I'm busy. Everyone's busy. I'm busy. I still managed to have a social life. Your social life consists of hooking up with women you meet at CrossFit and then ghosting them. At least I'm in the game, Dom countered. You're sitting on the bench, and the bench is getting comfortable. Too comfortable. I knew he was right, which just made me more annoyed. After my last relationship imploded spectacularly, finding your girlfriend in bed with her just a friend coworker will do that, I'd retreated into work in Netflix. It had been 14 months? Jesus. Maybe Dom had a point. What's in it for me? I asked, already regretting the question. Dom's eyes lit up. He knew he had me. If you go on 5 actual dates in 5 weeks, and I mean real dates, with real women, lasting at least 1 hour each, I'll invest $10,000 in your startup, no equity required. I nearly choked on my beer. Seriously? Where would you get that kind of money? My bonus came through last week, he said with a shrug. Tech sales had been very good to Dominic. Consider it an investment in your personal development. And if I don't complete the challenge? You buy Super Bowl tickets for us. Good ones. I winced. That would be at least $5,000, maybe more. Those are some expensive dates. Worth it to get you out of your cave, Dom said, holding out his hand. Do we have a deal? I should have said no. I really should have. But the thought of that $10,000, enough to hire another part-time developer, was too tempting. Fine, I said, shaking his hand. But I set some ground rules. No fix-ups with your weird CrossFit friends, and no interfering once the dates are set up. Deal, Dom agreed. But I get to verify that the dates actually happened. Screenshots of the meetup arrangements, and you have to check in from the location. What am I, 16? You want to track my phone too? If I could, I would, he laughed. This starts now. 5 weeks, 5 dates. May the dating gods have mercy on your soul. Little did I know just how much I would need that mercy. Disaster number 1, the multi-level marketer. I spent that night reluctantly updating my profile on 3 different dating apps. I used recent photos, mostly taken by Dom at various tech conferences or hiking trips, wrote what I thought was a witty but honest bio, and started swiping. By Wednesday, I had several matches and one promising conversation with a woman named Amber. She was 29, worked in entrepreneurship, vague, but okay, and loved hiking and true crime podcasts, 2 interests we shared. After a day of messaging, we agreed to meet Friday night at a low-key wine bar downtown. Looking back, there were red flags in our chat that I completely missed. I'm so passionate about empowering others to achieve financial freedom. My business mentor changed my life. He taught me that jobs are just journeys of the broke. I'm not just building a business, I'm building a lifestyle. But I was out of practice and just happy to have date number 1 lined up so quickly. I arrived at the wine bar 10 minutes early, chose a quiet table in the corner, and actually felt a little excited. Maybe Dom was right. Maybe I did need to get back out there. Amber arrived right on time, looking like her photos, win, and wearing a dress that seemed slightly too formal for the casual wine bar. Still, she was pretty, with long blonde hair and an enthusiastic smile that put me at ease. "You must be Jake," she said, giving me an unexpected hug before sitting down. "Guilty as charged," I replied. "It's nice to meet you in person." "Absolutely. I'm a big believer in face-to-face connection. There's just an energy exchange that happens when two souls align in the same physical space, you know?" Sure," I said, not entirely sure what she meant. "Should we get some wine?" We ordered a bottle of reasonably priced Pinot Noir and settled in. The conversation started normally enough, where we grew up, what we enjoyed about the city, our favorite hiking trails. Amber was animated and engaging, making intense eye contact that was flattering if a bit unnerving. "So tell me about your work," I said after we'd covered the basics. "You mentioned you're in entrepreneurship?" Something shifted in her expression. Her smile widened, and a gleam appeared in her eyes that I would soon learn to recognize as the look of a predator spotting prey. "I'm so glad you asked," she said, straightening in her seat. "I actually own my own business as an independent distributor for Vivacity Life Solutions." I'd never heard of it, but something about the way she said the name, like she was revealing she worked for the CIA, made me uneasy. "What's Vivacity Life Solutions?" I asked, taking a large sip of my wine. "Only the most transformative health and wellness company of our time," Amber replied, her voice dropping to a reverent whisper. "We're not just selling products, we're selling the opportunity to completely redesign your life." Oh no. I knew where this was going. "So, it's a multi-level marketing company?" I asked. Amber's smile tightened just slightly. "We prefer the term network marketing or direct sales. But yes, we utilize a revolutionary distribution model that cuts out the middlemen and allows everyday people like me to build generational wealth while helping others live their best lives." She reached into her purse and pulled out a glossy brochure, sliding it across the table to me. "Our product line includes everything from nutritional supplements to skincare to household cleaning products, all using our proprietary blend of ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science." I glanced at the brochure, which showed impossibly happy people doing impossibly healthy things like laughing while eating salad and jogging on the beach at sunset. "That's interesting," I said, trying to steer the conversation back to normal date territory. "So, you mentioned you like true crime podcasts. Have you listened to that new series about the... You know what's truly criminal, Jake?" Amber interrupted, leaning forward intensely. "Working 40 hours a week for someone else's dream when you could be building your own empire." "Oh God. I'm actually working on my own startup," I said, hoping this might redirect her. Her eyes lit up. "That's perfect. Entrepreneurial minds think alike. So you already understand the value of multiple income streams. Vivacity could be the perfect side hustle while you build your tech thing." "My tech thing is actually doing pretty well," I said. "We just secured seed funding, Anne." "But are you truly financially free, Jake? Are you living your best life?" I looked down at my wine glass, wondering if I could drain it in one gulp without seeming alcoholic. "I'm working on it." "Well, I was too, until I discovered Vivacity," Amber said, launching into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. 2 years ago, I was stuck in a soul-crushing corporate job, living paycheck to paycheck, wondering if this was all life had to offer. Then my now mentor Skylar introduced me to Vivacity, and everything changed. For the next 20 minutes, I timed it on my watch. Amber detailed her journey with Vivacity, complete with income figures that seemed suspiciously round. I made exactly $10,000 my third month, and vague lifestyle improvements, I've never had this much energy or mental clarity. I tried several times to change the subject, but she skillfully brought every topic back to Vivacity. When I mentioned I enjoyed cooking, she explained how Vivacity's protein powder made the perfect smoothie. When I talked about a recent camping trip, she described how Vivacity's essential oils kept bugs away naturally. As she spoke, she kept edging her chair closer to mine, until our knees were almost touching. Her eye contact intensified to an almost hypnotic level. I felt like a rabbit being stalked by a particularly enthusiastic fox. The best part is, she continued, now practically vibrating with excitement, I'm building a team of empowered entrepreneurs, and I'm always looking for sharp, ambitious people to mentor. She reached out and put her hand on my arm, squeezing slightly. Jake, I don't do this often, but I sense something special in you. I think you'd be perfect for my business family. Thanks, but I'm really focused on my startup right now, I said, gently removing my arm from her grip. But that's what's so amazing about Vivacity. It's a turnkey business system that practically runs itself once you're established. All it takes is a small initial investment and a commitment to the process. What kind of investment? I asked, immediately regretting the question. Amber's smile widened. She thought she had me. Our premium starter kit is just $499, but it includes over $1,000 worth of products and business materials. It's practically stealing. That's a lot. It's an investment in your future, Jake. What's your future worth to you? This had gone far enough. I decided to be direct. Amber, I came here for a date, not a business opportunity. Her expression didn't change, but something hardened behind her eyes. Why can't it be both? The best relationships are built on shared goals and values. I value not selling protein powder to my friends and family, I said, then immediately felt bad for the snark. Look, you seem nice, but this isn't about being nice, Jake. This is about vision. Some people can see the opportunity of a lifetime, and others choose to stay comfortable in their little boxes. She gathered her brochure and stood up. When you're ready to step into your greatness, call me. Until then, enjoy your startup. She said startup the way most people might say communicable disease. Before I could respond, she was walking away, already typing on her phone, probably messaging the next potential recruit/date. I sat there for a moment, processing what had just happened, then pulled out my own phone to text Dom. Date number 1 complete. She tried to recruit me into a pyramid scheme. This is your fault. His response came seconds later, did she at least wait until after dinner to pitch you? We never made it to dinner. Ouch. Well, 1 down, 4 to go. I recommend looking for red flags next time. Like anyone who uses the words boss babe or has more than 3 emojis in their bio. I looked at the wine bill, $1.45 for a bottle we'd barely touched, and sighed. 1 down, 4 to go. Disaster number 2, the social media junkie. After the MLM ambush, I took a more careful approach to screening my next date. I scrutinized profiles for any signs of entrepreneurial opportunities or excessive motivational quotes. After several days of more selective swiping, I matched with Zoe, a 31-year-old photographer whose profile featured stunning landscape shots and a refreshingly normal bio that mentioned her love of sci-fi movies and spicy food. Our pre-date chat was promising. We bonded over a shared love of Christopher Nolan films and debated the merits of different hot sauces. She suggested meeting at a popular Korean barbecue place downtown for Saturday dinner, and I eagerly accepted. When I arrived at the restaurant, Zoe was already there, wearing a vintage Star Wars t-shirt under a stylish blazer, a good sign that she wasn't taking herself too seriously. She was shorter than I expected but had a warm smile and an easy laugh that immediately put me at ease. I was just debating whether to get us soju to start, she said after we'd greeted each other. I'm game if you are, I replied. Perfect. I know the owner, so he always gives me the good stuff. The server, who indeed seemed to know Zoe personally, brought us a bottle of premium soju and took our order. Zoe confidently ordered several dishes in what sounded like fluent Korean, impressing both me and the server. "You speak Korean?" I asked after he left. "Just restaurant Korean," she said with a laugh. I dated a Korean chef for 2 years and picked up the important phrases. Mostly food and swear words. I laughed. That's more impressive than my Spanish, which consists entirely of what I remember from high school and Taco Bell menu items. Conversation flowed easily as we shared stories about our worst travel experiences and favorite movies. Zoe was sharp, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in my startup when I talked about it. By the time our food arrived, I was thinking this might actually be a successful date. Then came the phones. As the server arranged the sizzling platters of meat on our table, Zoe pulled out her phone, a top-of-the-line iPhone Pro with a bedazzled case, and held it up. "Do you mind if I take a few pictures before we eat? The lighting in here is amazing." "Not at all," I said, sitting back to give her space. What I assumed would be a few pictures turned into an elaborate photo shoot. Zoe stood up, repositioned herself at multiple angles, adjusted plates, moved side dishes, and even asked our server to bring an extra garnish of microgreens for color contrast. After about 5 minutes of this, I cleared my throat. "Should we maybe start cooking before the meat gets warm?" "Just one more," she said, not looking up from her phone. "I need to get the steam rising off the grill just right." She finally sat down, but instead of putting her phone away, she began rapidly typing. "Sorry, just need to post these while they're still relevant. Sunday evening is peak engagement time for food content." "Food content?" I asked. "For my social platforms," she said, still typing. "I've been building my personal brand for about 3 years now. I'm not an influencer yet, well, technically I am since I have a few paid partnerships, but I'm more of a content creator focused on lifestyle, travel, and culinary experiences." "Oh," I said, unsure how to respond. "That's cool." Zoe finally looked up, seemingly satisfied with her post. "Okay, now we can eat. Do you want me to cook, or should we take turns?" "You're the expert," I said, gesturing to the grill. Zoe skillfully began arranging meat on the hot surface, explaining the best cooking techniques for each cut. I was genuinely impressed by her knowledge and was starting to think I'd misjudged her phone behavior when she suddenly gasped. "Oh my God, Amy just got engaged." She turned her phone to show me a picture of a woman I'd never seen before, flashing a sizable diamond ring. "We went to college together. This is her 3rd engagement in 4 years, but this one might actually stick. His family owns like half of Connecticut." "Congratulations to her," I said, reaching for my chopsticks as Zoe placed some perfectly grilled beef on my plate. "I need to comment something supportive but not too enthusiastic in case they break up again," she murmured, returning to her phone. This set the pattern for the rest of the meal. Every few minutes, Zoe would be pulled back into her phone, responding to comments on her food post, checking various social media feeds, taking more photos of new dishes as they arrived. Each time, she'd apologize briefly before diving back into whatever digital emergency demanded her attention. During one of these phone sessions, I decided to test something. I started telling her about the time I allegedly got arrested in Amsterdam. "So then the police officer says, 'Sir, that's not a bicycle, that's the mayor's prize-winning goat,'" I concluded. "That's crazy," Zoe replied without looking up, clearly not having heard a word I said. I sighed and poured myself more soju. When the check came, Zoe insisted on splitting it evenly, which I appreciated. As we walked out of the restaurant, I wondered if the date was salvageable. Despite the phone addiction, Zoe was smart and interesting when actually engaged in conversation. "I had a good time," I said cautiously as we stood outside. "Me too," she replied, seeming genuinely enthusiastic. "Oh, wait, we didn't take any pictures together." Before I could respond, she had grabbed my arm and pulled me close, holding her phone out for a selfie. "Smile," she commanded, and I awkwardly complied. She frowned at the result. The lighting's not great here. Let's try over there under that street lamp. For the next 10 minutes, I was directed through a series of increasingly specific poses in various locations around the restaurant's exterior. Look natural. Laugh like I just said something funny. Gaze thoughtfully into the distance. Finally satisfied, Zoe returned to rapid-fire typing on her phone. What are those for? I asked, curious despite myself. My Instagram story, of course. And maybe a TikTok compilation if I get enough good content from this week's dates. My blood ran cold. This week's dates? Plural? Oh yeah, she said casually. I'm doing a content series called Summer of Love, 30 Dates in 30 Days. My followers are voting on who gets a second date. It's gotten really good engagement so far. I stared at her, speechless. Don't worry, she added, misreading my expression, I won't use your name. Just date number 14, startup guy. Unless you want the exposure? I have close to 20K followers now. I'm good, I managed. Your choice, she shrugged. But think about it, if my followers like you, we could do a couple series. Those always perform really well. My last boyfriend got a sponsorship deal with a men's skincare brand just from appearing in my content. Zoe, I said carefully, did you agree to go out with me just for your social media content? She looked genuinely confused by the question. Well, not just for that. But it's kind of a win-win, right? You get a nice dinner, I get content, maybe we hit it off, maybe we don't. Either way, it makes for a good story. I'm not really comfortable being part of a social media experiment, I said. She rolled her eyes. Everyone is part of a social media experiment. The difference is, I'm monetizing mine. I decided it was time to end the evening. I think I'm going to head home. Sure, that's fine, she said, already turning back to her phone. I need to edit these anyway before I post the recap. But hey, if you change your mind about the exposure, let me know. My DMs are always open. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Dom. How'd it go with the photographer? I texted back, she's documenting all her dates for social media. I'm date number 14, startup guy. His response, could be worse. At least she didn't try to sell you essential oils. 2 down, 3 to go, I thought grimly. Disaster number 3, the conspiracy theorist. After the social media fiasco, I decided to take a break from dating apps and try meeting someone the old-fashioned way. As luck would have it, my neighbor was throwing a housewarming party that weekend, and she promised there would be lots of normal, single people there. The party was pleasantly low-key, about 20 people gathered in my neighbor's newly renovated loft, drinking craft beer and making the kind of small talk that accompanies meeting strangers you have only one person in common with. I was grabbing another beer from the kitchen when I quite literally bumped into Morgan. She was tall, with short-cropped dark hair and striking green eyes. She wore black jeans and a vintage concert t-shirt that sparked an immediate conversation about our shared taste in music. Sorry about that, I said after our collision. I wasn't looking where I was going. No worries, she replied with a smile. I was just escaping a conversation about mortgage rates. You've rescued me, really. We ended up talking for over an hour, retreating to a quiet corner of the loft where we could actually hear each other. Morgan was a veterinary technician who had moved to the city 6 months ago. She was smart, sarcastic in the best way, and seemed refreshingly normal. When she suggested meeting up for a hike that Sunday, I eagerly agreed. We met at the trailhead of a popular hiking spot just outside the city. It was a beautiful fall day, crisp air, blue skies, and the leaves just beginning to change color. Morgan arrived in practical hiking gear and brought homemade trail mix, scoring major points in my book. The first hour of our hike was genuinely enjoyable. We maintained an easy pace, talking about everything from our favorite hiking spots to our worst childhood pets. Morgan told hilarious stories about her work at the vet clinic, and I found myself laughing more than I had in months. As we reached a scenic overlook and stopped to rest, Morgan pulled a water bottle from her backpack. But it wasn't just any water bottle, it was wrapped entirely in aluminum foil. "Thirsty?" I asked, nodding toward her unusual water container. "Oh, this?" She held up the foil-wrapped bottle. "It blocks the frequencies." I assumed she was joking. Right, those pesky water bottle frequencies. Instead of laughing, Morgan's expression turned serious. "You'd be surprised how many everyday objects emit harmful electromagnetic frequencies. They can disrupt your body's natural energy field and even alter your DNA over time." I blinked, uncertain how to respond. "I don't think that's scientifically." "That's what they want you to think," she interrupted, her voice dropping to a near whisper despite us being alone on the mountain. "The telecommunications industry has funded most of the research that claims EMF is harmless." "They?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "The corporate government complex," she said, as if this should be obvious. "Big telecom, big pharma, big agriculture, they're all connected. They're poisoning us through our food, water, air, and digital devices while making us pay for the privilege." I took a long drink from my own unprotected water bottle, buying time to think. I'd never met a real-life conspiracy theorist before, at least not one who seemed so normal in every other way. "That's an interesting perspective," I said diplomatically. "Shall we continue the hike?" Morgan nodded, but the conspiracy floodgates had been opened. As we resumed walking, she began sharing her theories about chemtrails, weather control technology, vaccines, tracking nanobots, and something called Project Bluebeam that apparently involved NASA creating a fake alien invasion using holographic technology. I tried several times to steer the conversation back to normal topics, but Morgan could connect any subject to her sprawling conspiracy worldview. When I mentioned my brother's recent flight delay, she explained how airlines deliberately manipulate schedules to maintain the illusion of scarcity in air travel. Despite my growing concern about Morgan's grip on reality, I couldn't help but be impressed by the sheer complexity of her conspiracy universe. Everything connected to everything else in an elaborate web where nothing was coincidental, and all events served some shadowy agenda. The breaking point came when we reached the summit of our hike. The view was spectacular, rolling hills stretching to the horizon, the city skyline visible in the distance. I took out my phone to snap a picture. Morgan's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. "I wouldn't do that." "Take a picture?" I asked, startled by her sudden movement. "Use your phone here," she said, looking around nervously. "This elevation is perfect for signal interception. Plus, there's probably a listening station nearby." I looked around at the deserted hilltop. "A listening station? This area has strategic value. See that cell tower over there?" She pointed to a distant structure barely visible on a neighboring ridge. "That's not just for phone service. It's a monitoring node in the surveillance grid." I pocketed my phone, mostly to make her relax. "Morgan, not everything is a conspiracy." Her expression softened with something like pity. "That's exactly what someone would say if they hadn't done their research. Look, I don't blame you. Most people are still asleep. I was too, until I started connecting the dots." "What made you start connecting the dots?" I asked, genuinely curious about what had led her down this rabbit hole. "It started when I noticed I always got a headache after using Wi-Fi," she explained. "Then I found this online community of people experiencing the same thing. One thing led to another, and suddenly everything made sense, all the patterns, all the coincidences that aren't coincidences at all." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small stack of business card-sized papers. "Here, I made these information packets. The QR code leads to a secure messaging platform where we discuss the things mainstream social media censors." I reluctantly accepted the card, which featured a jumble of clip art images including an eye, a pyramid, and what appeared to be a 5G tower with skull and crossbones. Thanks, I said, tucking it into my pocket. Should we head back down? It looks like it might rain soon. Weather manipulation, Morgan muttered, glancing suspiciously at the clouds gathering overhead. They don't want too many people up here seeing the patterns in the sky. The hike down was tense, with Morgan periodically stopping to point out evidence of various conspiracies, a strange rock formation that was obviously artificial, a hiking trail marker that contained coded messages, and a bird that she claimed was not behaving like a real bird. By the time we reached the parking lot, I was mentally exhausted. How could someone so seemingly normal and interesting have such a profoundly paranoid worldview? As we reached our cars, I struggled with how to end the date. Despite her conspiracy theories, Morgan hadn't been mean or malicious, just deeply, fundamentally disconnected from reality as I understood it. Thanks for the hike, I said awkwardly. It was enlightening. I enjoyed it too, she replied with a warm smile that momentarily made me forget the last 2 hours of conspiracy theories. Would you like to come to a meeting on Thursday? We're discussing how to protect ourselves from the upcoming quantum financial reset. I can't on Thursday, I said, which was technically true since I had a client meeting. Another time, then, she said, apparently unfazed by my obvious reluctance. Be careful with your phone. If it starts feeling warm for no reason, that means they're accessing your microphone and camera remotely. Wrap it in aluminum foil immediately. I'll keep that in mind, I promised. As she drove away, I texted Dom, just finished date number 3. She thinks my phone is spying on me. Well, more specifically, that they are spying on me through my phone. He replied immediately, is she hot? Not the point. So that's a yes. Is she free on Saturday? I've always wanted to date a conspiracy theorist. I'm blocking your number. 3 down, 2 to go. The future was looking grim. Disaster number 4, the X-File. After 3 consecutive dating disasters, I was seriously considering forfeiting the bet with Dom. Super Bowl tickets were expensive, but was the trauma of 2 more potentially disastrous dates worth $10,000? Before I could decide, fate intervened in the form of an email from Sophia, my college girlfriend. We dated for most of junior and senior year before breaking up amicably when she got accepted to a graduate program across the country. That was 6 years ago, and we'd barely kept in touch since then, occasionally liking each other's social media posts or sending a quick birthday message. Her email was simple, in town for a conference next week. Would love to catch up if you're free. S. This seemed like a gift from the dating gods. Sophia and I had parted on good terms, and catching up with an ex had to count as a date for Dom's challenge, right? No awkward small talk, no surprise conspiracy theories, just comfortable conversation with someone I'd once cared deeply about. I suggested dinner at an upscale Italian place downtown, and she enthusiastically agreed. For the first time since this challenge began, I was actually looking forward to a date. When Sophia walked into the restaurant, I was struck by how little she'd changed. Her dark curly hair was shorter now, and she'd traded her college-era glasses for contacts, but her smile and the way she moved were exactly as I remembered. She spotted me and waved, weaving through the tables with familiar grace. Jake, she said warmly, leaning in for a hug that lasted just a beat longer than necessary. It's so good to see you. You too, I replied honestly. You look amazing. We settled into our table, ordered wine, and fell into easy conversation. Sophia had completed her PhD in marine biology and was now working for an environmental research institute in California. She'd traveled extensively for her research, Australia, Indonesia, Costa Rica, studying the impact of climate change on coastal ecosystems. Enough about my fish stories, she said after telling me about her recent project. Tell me about your startup. I've been following your company updates online, it sounds like you're doing incredible work. I was flattered that she'd been keeping tabs on me, and we spent the next half hour discussing the challenges and rewards of building a company from scratch. Sophia asked insightful questions and seemed genuinely interested in the technical details that usually made my date's eyes glaze over. By the time our main courses arrived, I was remembering all the reasons I'd fallen for her in college. Her intelligence, her enthusiasm, the way she leaned forward slightly when truly engaged in conversation. The familiar attraction was definitely still there, simmering beneath the surface of our friendly catch-up. "Do you remember Professor Harmon's statistical analysis class?" she asked, laughing as she twirled pasta around her fork. "I would have failed without your study guides." "Are you kidding?" "You're the one who explained standard deviations in a way that finally made sense," I countered. Using ice cream scoops as a metaphor was genius. "Oh my God, I'd forgotten about that," she said, her laughter drawing glances from nearby tables. We made a good team. There was a brief, charged silence as we both seemed to consider the implication of her words. "So," I asked carefully, "are you seeing anyone these days?" Sophia took a sip of wine before answering. "Not at the moment. I was in a relationship for about 2 years, but we broke up last summer. He couldn't handle my travel schedule." She shrugged. "The right person will understand that my work is important to me." "What about you?" "I'm currently in the middle of what my friend Dom calls dating boot camp," I admitted, giving her a brief overview of the bet and my 3 disastrous dates so far. Sophia found the stories hilarious, especially the conspiracy theorist. "Aluminum foil water bottles," she gasped between fits of laughter. "That's next-level paranoia." To be fair, if they are targeting hikers with mind control beams, she's the only one prepared, I joked. As dinner progressed to dessert and coffee, the conversation turned more personal, touching on family updates, mutual college friends, and cherished memories from our relationship. The connection between us felt strong and comfortable, like putting on a favorite sweater you'd forgotten in the back of your closet and finding it still fits perfectly. When the check came, I insisted on paying despite Sophia's protests. "Consider it a thank you for being the one normal date in this bizarre challenge," I said. Outside the restaurant, standing close together in the cool evening air, there was a moment of hesitation. The kind of moment where a goodnight kiss feels both inevitable and uncertain. "My hotel is just a few blocks from here," Sophia said softly, looking up at me with familiar warmth in her eyes. "I could walk you back," I offered, my heart beating a little faster. "I'd like that." The walk to her hotel was quiet, our hands occasionally brushing against each other. When we reached the lobby, Sophia turned to face me. "Would you like to come up for a nightcap?" she asked. "The hotel bar is so impersonal, and I have a bottle of good whiskey in my room." I didn't hesitate. "I'd love to." In her room, Sophia kicked off her heels while I poured us each a finger of whiskey from the bottle she'd brought from California. We settled onto the small couch by the window, overlooking the city lights. "This feels surreal," she admitted, taking a sip of her drink. "Being here with you after all this time." "Good surreal or weird surreal?" I asked. "Definitely good," she said, smiling. She placed her whiskey on the side table and shifted closer to me on the couch. "I've thought about you over the years, you know." "Have you?" I asked, finding myself leaning toward her. "More than I probably should admit," Sophia replied, her voice dropping to just above a whisper. What happened next felt as natural as breathing. Our lips met in a kiss that was both familiar and exciting, like returning to a favorite place and discovering new details you'd never noticed before. Her hand slid to the back of my neck, and I pulled her closer, the years apart dissolving in the warmth between us. Later, tangled in hotel sheets, Sophia's head resting on my chest, I felt a contentment I hadn't experienced in ages. This wasn't just nostalgia, it was something more. "So," she murmured, tracing patterns on my skin. "Does this help with your dating challenge?" I laughed softly. "Definitely the high point so far." "When do you go back to California?" I asked, the question hanging heavier in the air than I'd intended. Sophia propped herself up on one elbow, her expression growing serious. That's actually something I wanted to talk about. The Institute is opening a research center here next month. They've asked me to lead it. My heart quickened. You're moving back? Thinking about it, she said carefully. It's a great opportunity professionally, but I wanted to see if there might be other reasons to consider it. Her eyes held mine, vulnerable and questioning. I'd say there are definitely reasons worth considering, I replied, pulling her close again. Morning came too soon, sunlight streaming through curtains we'd forgotten to close. I woke to find Sophia already dressed, sitting at the small desk and typing rapidly on her laptop. Hey, I said groggily. She looked up, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Morning. Sorry, emergency work email. One of our sensor arrays is malfunctioning. No problem, I said, sitting up. Everything okay? Not really, she sighed, running a hand through her curls. I need to make some calls. Would you mind giving me some space? Conference starts in an hour, and I need to deal with this first. Of course, I said, gathering my clothes. As I dressed, Sophia remained focused on her laptop, the easy intimacy of the night before replaced by professional urgency. Just before I left, she looked up. Last night was wonderful, she said sincerely. Can we have dinner again before I leave town? Friday maybe? I'd like that, I replied, bending to kiss her cheek. Text me the details. Outside the hotel, I texted Dom, date number 4 complete. Reconnected with Sophia. His response was immediate, your college Sophia? That's cheating. Ex-girlfriends don't count. You never specified they had to be new dates, I replied. Besides, we've been apart for 6 years. That's practically a different person. Fine, I'll allow it. Did you sleep with her? None of your business. That's a yes. Be careful there, buddy. Recycling exes usually ends in the same place it did the first time. I pocketed my phone, annoyed at Dom's warning but unable to completely dismiss it. Sophia and I had broken up for a reason, our lives were heading in different directions. Had that really changed? Friday arrived with no text from Sophia about dinner plans. I sent her a casual message midday, still on for tonight? 3 hours later, she replied, I'm so sorry, Jake. Conference schedule got completely overloaded. Rain check? Disappointed but understanding, I replied, no problem. Before you leave town? Will try my best. She wrote back with a heart emoji. But the days passed with no further messages from Sophia. On Sunday, the day she was scheduled to fly back to California, I sent one last text, safe travels. It was great seeing you. Her reply came hours later, when she'd presumably landed on the West Coast, you too. Thanks for understanding. Life's complicated right now, but I'll be in touch when things settle down. I stared at the message, recognizing the gentle letdown for what it was. Whatever connection we'd rekindled had already dimmed with distance and time. Some relationships, no matter how good they once were, belonged in the past. Dom's words echoed in my mind, recycling exes usually ends in the same place it did the first time. With a sigh, I put down my phone. For down, one more disaster to go. Disaster number 5, the perfect match. I can't believe you're making me do this, I grumbled to Dom as he scrolled through my dating app. Stop whining, he replied, swiping left with brutal efficiency. Your problem is that you're too forgiving in your selection process. You need to be pickier. It was Wednesday night, 4 days before my dating challenge deadline, and Dom had invited himself over to help me secure my final date. 3 beers and a pizza later, he'd appointed himself my dating app curator. Too much makeup, hiking photo is a cliché, quotes The Office in her bio, next. Dom narrated as he rejected profile after profile. The Office is a good show, I protested weakly. It's the pumpkin spice latte of TV references, Dom replied. Wait, hold up. This one has potential. He showed me the screen. The woman, Elena, 33, had dark hair, intelligent eyes, and a subtle smile that suggested she was laughing at a private joke. Her profile mentioned that she was a mechanical engineer who enjoyed rock climbing, science fiction novels, and cooking experimental fusion cuisine. She seems way too cool for me, I said dubiously. Exactly why you should aim high for your final date, Dom replied, already typing. What are you? Don't message her as me. I lunged for the phone, but Dom held it out of reach. Too late, he grinned, showing me the message he'd sent. Your profile mentioned fusion cuisine. If your cooking is as fusion as my friend's Korean-Polish restaurant, kimchi pierogi, life-changing, I'd love to hear about it over drinks. That doesn't even sound like me, I groaned. It's better than what you would have sent, Dom replied confidently. Trust the process. To my shock, Elena responded within minutes, kimchi pierogi sounds amazing. Though my latest experiment was Thai Mexican, green curry tacos. Drinks sounds great, how about the Alchemist tomorrow at 7? And just like that, my final date was set. The Alchemist was a trendy cocktail bar downtown, known for scientific-themed drinks involving liquid nitrogen and edible chemistry. I arrived 10 minutes early, nervous in a way I hadn't been for the previous dates. Maybe because this was the last hurdle before claiming Dom's $10,000, or maybe because Elena's profile had genuinely intrigued me. At exactly 7 o'clock, she walked in, looking even more striking than her photos, dark hair in a simple braid, minimal makeup, wearing jeans and a deep blue blouse under a leather jacket. She spotted me and walked over with confident strides. Jake, she asked, extending her hand. I'm Elena. Her handshake was firm, her smile warm but reserved. We claimed 2 seats at the bar, and the mixologist, they weren't called bartenders here, presented us with elaborate periodic table-styled menus. The nitrogen-infused drinks are their specialty, I said, but they tend to be overpriced spectacles with mediocre flavor. Elena laughed. A style over substance critique? I appreciate the honesty. We each ordered. Elena chose a smoked old-fashioned, while I went for a classic Manhattan. So, she said once our drinks arrived, tell me about this startup that's consuming your life. I blinked in surprise. How did you know my startup consumes my life? Educated guess, she replied with a slight smile. Most founders I know have the same haunted look of perpetual sleep deprivation mixed with stubborn optimism. I laughed, recognizing the accuracy of her description. Guilty as charged. We're developing an integrated software system for independent healthcare providers. Helps them compete with the big hospital conglomerates without drowning in administrative tasks. Elena nodded appreciatively. Solving a real problem instead of creating another food delivery app. I like that. The conversation flowed remarkably well. Elena was sharp and thoughtful, asking insightful questions about my work while sharing stories about her own engineering projects. She'd recently helped design a more efficient irrigation system for urban agriculture, and her excitement when describing the technical challenges was infectious. Sorry, she said after explaining a particularly complex problem she'd solved. I tend to get overly technical when I'm passionate about something. Don't apologize, I replied honestly. It's refreshing to hear someone talk about their work with genuine enthusiasm. After our second round of drinks, we decided to continue the evening at a nearby ramen place. Walking the few blocks, our conversation never lagged. We debated the best science fiction authors, discovered we'd both traveled to Japan, though 3 years apart, and found we shared a peculiar love for documentaries about bizarre historical events. No conspiracy theories though, I clarified, sharing an abbreviated version of my hiking date disaster. Elena laughed so hard she nearly choked on her noodles. I once dated a guy who believed the moon landing was filmed in his hometown in Nevada. He tried to show me the exact barn where they supposedly built the set. What happened with moon landing guy? I asked. Let's just say it wasn't one small step for mankind, but a giant leap away from crazy for me, she quipped. By the time we finished dinner, I realized with surprise that 3 hours had passed. Not once had Elena checked her phone, tried to recruit me into a pyramid scheme, or wrapped anything in aluminum foil. The date was going surprisingly well, suspiciously well, given my recent track record. "Want to walk for a bit?" she suggested as we left the restaurant. "There's a nice riverside path nearby." The night was cool but pleasant, the river path illuminated by softly glowing lamps. We walked close together, occasionally brushing shoulders. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said after a comfortable silence. "Why are you doing this dating challenge with your friend?" I stopped walking, caught off guard by the directness of her question. "How did you know about that?" Elena gave me a slightly embarrassed smile. "I know your friend Dom." "Not well, we rock climb at the same gym. When he saw me on your dating app, he messaged me separately to explain the whole bet situation." My stomach dropped. "So this is, what? A pity date? A favor to Dom?" "No," she said firmly. "I agreed to meet you because your profile seemed interesting, and Dom's message was amusing. Finding out about the bet just added a layer of intrigue. I wanted to see what kind of guy would endure 4 disastrous dates for a business investment." "And?" I asked, still unsure how to feel about this revelation. "And I'm glad I did," she said simply, her eyes meeting mine. "Bet or no bet, I'm having a great time." The sincerity in her voice melted my momentary annoyance. "Me too." Honestly, after the last 4 dates, I was expecting another disaster. "Sorry to disappoint," she teased. "I think I'll manage to cope with the disappointment," I replied, finding myself drawn closer to her. When I kissed her, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, no hesitation, no awkwardness, just a perfect moment of connection beneath the riverside lights. Walking Elena to her car later, I found myself reluctant for the evening to end. "I'd like to see you again," I said. "No bets involved next time." "I'd like that," she replied, her smile reflecting the same warmth I felt. "Though technically, you still need to complete this date to win your bet." "True," I agreed. "I should text Dom and let him know I've fulfilled my final obligation." "About that," Elena said with a mischievous look. "Dom may have mentioned the terms required each date to last at least an hour." I checked my watch. "We've been together for almost 5 hours." "Yes, but how will he know?" Elena's eyes sparkled with challenge. "You should probably keep this date going just a little longer, to be absolutely certain." "That's very responsible thinking," I agreed, stepping closer. "I'm a very thorough person," she replied, pulling me toward her by my jacket lapels. "And I believe in finishing what I start." Later that night, lying in Elena's apartment with her curled against my side, I sent Dom a simple text, "5th date complete. I win." His reply came seconds later, "Details?" "Just transfer the money," I wrote back. "And thank you for the worst bet I've ever won." I put down my phone and turned toward Elena, who was watching me with an amused expression. "So," she said, tracing her fingers along my arm. 5 disasters, huh?" I pulled her closer, marveling at how comfortable this felt despite having met her only hours ago. 4 disasters, I corrected. "And 1 pleasant surprise." "Just pleasant," she teased. "Exceptional," I amended. "Worth every dating disaster that led to you." "Smooth talker," she laughed, but her eyes were soft as they met mine. "I'm just getting started," I replied, realizing with sudden clarity that I meant it in more ways than one. Epilogue, 1 year later. "I still can't believe you invited all of them," I muttered to Dom as we stood at the bar, watching the diverse collection of guests at my startup's first anniversary celebration. "It's poetic justice," Dom replied, clinking his glass against mine. "Besides, your dating disasters make for excellent party conversation." Across the room, Amber from disaster number 1 was enthusiastically pitching her MLM products to an increasingly uncomfortable-looking investor. I made a mental note to rescue him before she could show him the color-coded spreadsheet of projected earnings. Near the buffet table, Morgan, the conspiracy theorist, was deep in conversation with my lead developer, who appeared fascinated by her theories about government surveillance. Given his cybersecurity background, he was probably mentally cataloging all the technical impossibilities in her claims. Zoe, the social media addict, was doing what she did best, documenting every aspect of the party for her followers. At least she'd asked permission before making our successful startup part of her content. Even Sophia had made an appearance, now permanently relocated to the city for her research position. We'd managed to establish a genuine friendship after our brief reconnection, though it had taken several months and some awkward conversations to get there. Your weird social experiment actually worked out pretty well, I admitted to Dom, though I maintain that the means were somewhat questionable. The ends justify the means, Dom shrugged, gesturing toward Elena, who was chatting with my parents across the room. Plus, I'm an excellent wingman. You're taking credit for Elena and me? You just happened to spot her on a dating app. I have an eye for compatibility, Dom insisted. Also, you still owe me for that Super Bowl ticket. You lost the bet. I protested. I completed all 5 dates. Yes, but I specified 5 dates with 5 women. You and Elena have been on at least 50 dates by now. That's technically failing by exceeding the parameters. I laughed and shook my head. Your logic is deeply flawed. Speaking of deeply flawed, Dom said, nodding toward the entrance, your future father-in-law just arrived. I followed his gaze to see Elena's father, a brilliant but intimidating aerospace engineer who still hadn't quite warmed to me, entering the party. He doesn't hate you, Dom offered helpfully. He just thinks you could have chosen a more practical industry than healthcare software. Thanks for the pep talk, I muttered. Elena appeared at my side, slipping her hand into mine. My dad's asking about scalability models again. I told him you'd explain your server architecture. Wonderful, I said with a sigh. Nothing says party like discussing cloud computing strategies. Elena laughed and kissed my cheek. He's testing you. Just mention quantum computing at least twice and he'll be impressed. As we crossed the room toward her father, I marveled at how a ridiculous bet had somehow led to all of this, a successful business, a serious relationship, and even an unlikely collection of friends from my dating disasters. By the way, Elena whispered just before we reached her father, I have news about the San Francisco contract. They signed this afternoon. I stopped in my tracks. The full deployment? That's our biggest client yet. Full deployment, 3-year commitment, she confirmed with a grin. That's incredible. We should tell my dad, she finished my sentence. He responds better to good news. Later that night, as the party wound down and the last guests departed, I found myself on the office balcony with Elena, looking out over the city lights. Not bad for a guy who couldn't get a normal date a year ago, she teased, leaning her head against my shoulder. I'm still convinced it was elaborate sabotage, I replied, wrapping my arm around her. Dom deliberately found the 4 worst dating matches possible so that when he introduced us, you'd seem impossibly perfect by comparison. A diabolical scheme, Elena agreed solemnly. Very elaborate. Years in the making. Too elaborate? Definitely. But it makes for a better story than we met on a dating app. I turned to face her, suddenly serious. I've been thinking about stories lately. Specifically, our next chapter. Elena raised an eyebrow. That sounds suspiciously metaphorical. It is, I admitted, reaching into my pocket. I had planned something more elaborate, but after everything, I thought simple might be better. The small velvet box in my palm made her eyes widen. Are you? I am, I confirmed, opening the box to reveal the emerald ring we'd admired in a shop window months ago. Elena, will you marry me? Her smile was brighter than all the city lights combined. After everything? The dating disasters, the business chaos, my father's interrogations, and Dom's terrible influence? Especially after all that, I said. Then yes, she said, pulling me close. Absolutely yes. As we kissed, I made a mental note to thank Dom properly, perhaps by making him plan a bachelor party as elaborate and potentially disastrous as his dating challenge. It seemed only fair. After all, the best stories, like the best relationships, often begin with a series of spectacular disasters. The end.